Alright, hi everybody. My name is Audrey Spar. I am going into my second year at the University of Arizona, and I am studying medicine. Today I wanted to explore biodiversity. I did my entire honors. Oh, it's not letting me. Okay, so I wanted to do my entire honors project about biodiversity and specifically looking in my own community and seeing how, like, what steps we could take in our communities to create a more biodiverse and better environment. So the areas that I decided to explore are my backyard, at Hills State Nature Reserve, a neighborhood stream, some local soccer fields, a parking lot, and a gravel lot. And then just to give you perspective, this street to this street is 1 mile, and we are exploring all of these little pins right here. So, um, this is that stream, this is the backyard, this is the nature reserve, this is the parking lot, this is the gravel lot, and then these are the soccer fields. My initial thoughts on how they will compare to each other is I thought that Chalco Hills is going to be the most biodiverse just because of the amount of protection and development that they have there, and I thought that the parking lot was going to be the least simply because it's a paved surface that's gonna be a really tough environment for plants and animals to exist. Um, and then I thought that the stream would be the second, my backyard would be after that, the local soccer fields would be after that, and then the gravel lot would follow. So talking about biodiversity and a quick apology, I'm going to read this slide word for word. Biodiversity does refer to the variety of life on Earth, encompassing the different species of plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms, and the genetic differences within these species. The ecosystems they form. It is crucial for maintaining ecosystem health and stability, as each species plays a unique role in its environment. High biodiversity contributes to ecosystem resilience, productivity, and the ability to provide essential services such as clean water, clean air, and pollination of plants, and decomposition of waste. Why is biodiversity important? There's a bunch of ecosystem services that come with biodiversity, including pollution, soil health, water purification, and climate regulation. The most important to my area is definitely going to be pollination and soil health. I live in a farming suburb, so we have a lot of crops being grown, and so having those being pollinated and having our soil health nice and high is going to be really, really important. Um, Looking at the importance of biodiversity again, it's also really important for resilience and stability. So, high biodiversity is going to increase resilience to disturbances such as disease, invasive species, and climate change. It's also really important for genetic diversity, and having a large amount of genetic diversity is going to increase a species' entire ability to survive and adapt d- um, when things change. Some threats to biodiversity are going to be habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, and overexploitation. These are the ones that I've observed the most in my community, with them being in order here. Habitat deconstruction, my town is expanding thoroughly, and it's very, very urban. Like, urbanization is definitely taking over my town right now. So more about Gretna, Nebraska. Um, so for context, Gretna is situated in the eastern side of Nebraska. Um, the pin here shifted when I went to present mode. Where the circle is more where we are. We are right on the out on the outskirts of Omaha, which is a pretty big city here in Nebraska. Our climate here is going to be humid continental, and we have very, very hot summers and very, very cold winters. We have a decent amount of precipitation, and it's honestly a very, very good place for different types of plants to thrive. Um, our human impact on the local biodiversity. So as I mentioned before, Gretna is one of the fastest growing cities in Nebraska, and we have a lot of urbanization, but unfortunately, this is leading to habitat loss, fragmentation, and it's really impacting our local wildlife and plant species. We also, as I said before, are a farming suburb, but we have a lot of agriculture here um, uh, with a lot of crops, but specifically corn and soy are our most grown crops here. Now, looking into my actual findings, I found that the stream was actually the most biodiverse, and you can see in these pictures, this like little area is where that stream actually is, but the surrounding area is super, super dense with a lot of different plants and animals, and the density of these plants support a lot of different animals as well. Um, I really want to talk about community involvement here because it's super, super easy for you to get your community involved in something simple like cleaning up a stream when it's filled with litter and trash. So, this has a lot of benefits because you can work with restoration of the stream, just making sure that that water is clean and flowing. Um, it's also really good for environmental education. You can get kids involved in this. It's super, super easy for them. Um, protecting biodiversity, and it also like it feels good to get the people in your community involved in something like this. Um, then I Then I put Chaco Hills next, and I think that overall there are probably like it's probably more biodiverse overall, but I wanted to talk like the density levels of the biodiversity are just not the same as with that stream. But what's nice about Chalco is it's such a large area, so there's a lot larger animals and there's a lot more animals in this area specifically. As you can see it in this photo right here, there's like a bunch of deer grazing, which I always think is so pretty to see. Here I wanted to talk about conservation and how we can promote it. So Chalco does a really, really good job about community education, and they came to my school many, many times as a kid and taught us about different trees and different plants, and they made it fun. They also talked about why it's important that we are doing conservation, and they were like, here's some things that you can avoid and yada yada yada. But basically they were very, very vocal about how important conservation is, and they did a lot of good community outreach there. They also are very good about promoting sustainable land management so that our human impact on wildlife is a lot less. After that, I have the soccer fields being the third most biodiverse. Um, there were a good amount of mixtures of grasses and like a couple different weeds as well. But and there were also definitely birds and other thing like other animals in this area. As you can see, like there's all these little flower patches. There were also a bunch of clover patches too. Here I want to talk about how we can use like how we can apply conservation to our sports fields. Um, we can really help out here with our maintenance practices by avoiding fertilization and herbicide, um, and mowing less frequently. So for example, right now when the fields are in use because it's not in season, it would be ideal if they did not mow as much as they are. Um, but it would also be really beneficial if we could limit the play on like to a couple different fields just so that they are getting all the traction and have the rest of the fields be um for like the rest of the fields be able to become habitat for different wildlife. Then surprisingly, I actually have the gravel lot next. Um there were an abundance of grasses and weeds and like flowers just growing through here, and there was a bunch of fauna here as well. There were a lot of insects, bunch of birds that were just like sitting out here, and also a couple squirrels and stuff like that as well. And then not next, but the the parking lot is last in this list, but I wanted to put it next to the gravel lot just simply for our next slide. But here there's literally no biodiversity in this parking lot. It is an extremely tough place to have wildlife pass through. Obviously there were a couple bugs, but not much going on. I really wanted to talk about gravel versus pavement here. And if we can use gravel as opposed to pavement in our um on our roads and in our lots and in our uh driveways and things like that. So gravel is going to be much more beneficial just because it's a lot more permeable and it helps with water management. This is going to reduce your risk of flooding and erosion. It also does create habitats for like different insects and bugs, and it's also clearly pretty decent for plant growth. It is it's gonna be a harsh environment, but it is going to be a good one for plants that can grow there. It's also really, really good for temperature regulation, so it's gonna keep your driveway a lot cooler. Um, as pavement like absorbs and radiates a lot of heat, gravel doesn't do that to the same extent. Then I wanted to look at my own backyard. Um, it's maybe one of the least biodiverse things on this list, as it's very, very well manicured with pesticides and fertilizers being used. Our grass is thick, but it is frequently mowed. The biodiversity that we have is these couple of trees. We have a Mongolia tree and a couple maple trees. Um, and then our wildlife is pretty consistently. We have a good amount of bunnies, a good amount of birds, but there's also a dog, so I guess that makes it a little bit more biodiverse. I really wanted to talk about having a uh natural backyard here. So backyard biodiversity, your typical backyard is going to be very well maintained with regular mowing, fertilization, and non-native plants. This is how my backyard is. And we can apply just small changes that will significantly increase plant and animal diversity. Um, it's going to be really, really good for a lot of reasons, but specifically ecosystem services. This is going to create a really good habitat for a lot of the native animals, and it's also going to enhance your water management because you won't have to spend time watering plants that aren't native, like they're built to withstand the weather that we have here. And then the steps here is to plant native plants when you're doing your landscaping. Research the plants that are good for your area and choose those over the prettier ones. These plants are going to still be very, very pretty. You're gonna want to create habitat features. So this can include a lot of different things, but specifically is what we do is birdhouses and insect hotels. Also bat boxes are gonna be a really good thing that you can implement here. Then you want to reduce your chemical use, such as pesticides and fertilizers. These can actually be really harmful to like beneficial insects, and if they get in contact with water, it's going to be rough. Then create a compost and mulch and also a pollinator garden. So that is all for my little talk here. So thank you guys so much for listening.